guys think of my snazzy new intro animation? Phalanx Unhinged made it for me, so you should go check out his channel. Anyway, it looks like YouTube has completely disabled my ability to monetize any of my content, which is kind of infuriating because my channel is just starting to get a bit bigger. One of my early Patreon goals was to get rid of monetization anyway, but knowing that I don't even have the choice to turn it back on if I want kind of pisses me off. Even if you can donate just $1 a month, that would really help me out, guys. Anyway, it's Q&A part 2, so let's see what you guys left me. This one isn't going to be as long because there weren't as many questions this time. I ask again, if your Uncle Jack helped you off a horse, would you help your Uncle Jack off a horse? Well, joke's on you, bud. I don't have an Uncle Jack. Checkmate, atheists. Tom wants to know my favorite handgun. Here we go. This looks like it could kill a lot of innocent people. Based on recent events, do you think the United States is leading towards another civil conflict? Yeah, I definitely think so. I've actually been kind of bummed thinking about this. BlackLivesMatter video coming soon, by the way. What was the single event that made you stop or rethink being an SJW? I was at an anti-war protest back in 2011 and saw the progressive stack in action for the first time. What do you call a person who's sexually attracted to an ancient carving? Archaeosexual. Do you think you might be getting a little too self-important? I don't know, man. I'm just some guy on the internet. You should see the ego on some of these people. Should Hillary Clinton be arrested? Yeah, I definitely think so. The FBI director pretty much admitted that other people in her position would be facing prosecution, but they're just not going to do it with her. And I think that's bullshit. His reason was that they couldn't find intent, but there have been other cases of people doing things like this without intent and still being prosecuted because they still broke the law. Basically, the FBI is asking us to believe that 30,000 emails got deleted from a private server she wasn't supposed to be using, and this all happened entirely by accident when she's been in government for decades. They're asking us to believe that she's totally incompetent and this was all a big misunderstanding, in which case she shouldn't be president anyway. Who do you think is worse, Bernie or Hillary? Definitely Hillary. By a long shot. Bernie isn't anywhere near as corrupt. He says what he really thinks, even if I think he's wrong, and I really think that he deserved the Democratic nomination much more than she did. Who do you think is the funniest YouTuber? Well, I actually really like Nagon Mad's stuff. He always makes me laugh. Nagon Mad asks, how is it like being a sellout? Have you started buying coke? Well, no, but I do need to pick up some salt. What are your views on the current situation happening with the Alton Sterling case and the shooting in Dallas? Well, Black Lives Matter have been chanting the what do we want, dead cops, when do we want it now bullshit from day one, so nobody should really be surprised that some of their supporters are starting to do things like this. And Alton Sterling was carrying his weapon illegally and had the police called on him because he was allegedly brandishing it in a parking lot. Then when they showed up, he decided he was going to resist them. Defending this type of person as an innocent victim of police brutality really shows you what Black Lives Matter is actually about. You said your dad came from Egypt. Is he a Coptic Egyptian or is he irreligious? Did this affect your views? Well, he was raised Coptic and he sort of became less religious as time went on. It did affect my views in the sense that I was raised to be Christian, but I figured out at a pretty young age that I didn't believe in any of that stuff. iHypocrite wants to know whose dick he has to suck to get 10,000 subs. Well, just go through the list of people I've collaborated with or been shouted out by. I sucked all those dicks. What is your stance on abortion? Well, it's basically the same position that Christopher Hitchens had, which was, I'm against it ethically, but it should still be legal because the alternative is much, much worse. It should be educated against and discouraged, but it shouldn't be illegal. Choleric Shy Guy wants to know what she should do for her 18th birthday, how good her musical taste is, and why I continue talking to her despite the fact that she's pure syphilis. Your musical taste is one of the reasons that you're pure syphilis, but that only adds to the birthday present Fraulein and I are going to give you. Danny's libertarian principles fail again. Where do you shop for pixelated sunglasses? Also, any tips for someone looking to make their own videos? Well, I picked these up for the low price of absolutely nothing on Google image search. And as far as making your own videos goes, I would suggest keeping the editing tight, especially if you're not showing your face. A lot of people seem to just press record and talk without editing anything, so they leave in all these pauses and background noises and all this stuff, and it ends up being harder to watch that way, at least in my opinion. The audio is often just as, if not more important than the visual, especially for a channel channel like mine where the visuals remain simple. If you're doing a presentation kind of format, you have to make sure it sounds good. Any chance for a hangout or live stream with my other favorite, Kraut and T? Well, I've actually been on quite a few hangouts with Kraut. Just keep an eye out and I'll probably be on one of his streams in the near future. Favorite? That's all, just favorite.
You fucking pussy. You fucking wuss. You fucking baby fucker. Remember, you're a baby fucker. You're a sexual deviant.
If you had to have a one-night stand, Lacey Green, Big Red, Rebecca Ramsey, or a beehive? I think you mean Francesca Ramsey, but in any case, I'd like to keep my dick, so the beehive is out, Big Red is disgusting, and Lacey Green looks like a great white shark. I'd rather make Francesca call me Massa. Remember, I actually was Kangs and shit. Do you think Trump will actually be a good president, or do you just support him because Hillary is so damn awful? I think he at least has a chance of being a good president. All I really know right now is that I agree with his stated policy positions, and I don't agree with most of Hillary's. Are you more a fan of intellectual rigor or ponage? Well, this came up in my response to ContraPoints, but I think either one can be valuable depending on what you're addressing. Ponage is easier to do, but sometimes a person's argument is just so stupid that there's no point in spending the time going into this whole debunking process when you could just make fun of them and be done with it. Like this, for instance.
This is called a syllogism. Basically, there is a major premise, a minor premise, and a conclusion. An example would be, Gabby is a human. All humans breathe air. Therefore, Gabby breathes air. This is sound logic. However, if you mix up the premises a little bit, for example, Gabby breathes air. All humans breathe air. Therefore, Gabby is a human. This is not sound logic because Gabby can be a sloth or a toucan. Now let's make this relevant. All lives matter. Black lives are lives. Therefore, Black Lives Matter. Notice that nowhere in this logic does saying that Black Lives Matter discredit the fact that white lives matter as well.
Well, hold on a second, idiot. Aren't you gonna do it the other way around? It follows from saying all lives matter that Black Lives Matter, but it does not follow from saying Black Lives Matter that all lives matter. This is why vloggers should just keep talking about their hair or whatever movie they saw this week. This dumb cunt just perfectly illustrated why people have a problem with Black Lives Matter and thought she was discrediting all lives matter. She then links to a bunch of opinion pieces as evidence for this shitty 11-minute long video. Do you really expect me to do a whole video on her and be intellectually rigorous with this one? Nah, she's just a dumb cunt. Here's a question that went unanswered from the first Q&A. How do you handle with regressives who invade your channel? I once had debated with a regressive and he gave me mental gymnastics. Well, to be honest, I haven't gotten that many negative comments. Usually it's just from people who disagree with me on a specific detail and they just want to have a conversation. There's nothing wrong with that. As far as actual regressives or nut jobs go, I did get some negative comments after the whole stream with Amos Yee, and most of it seemed to be coming from people who got upset at a particular part of the stream, stopped watching, and then came over here to go around in a circle over things that were actually addressed in the stream. The problem with talking to an actual regressive is that you might be trying to make a good faith argument, but they'll be arguing in bad faith. And if they're going to do that, it becomes difficult to have an honest conversation about anything. It's always good to have some kind of dialogue with people you disagree with, but the problem is that if they're not interested in having a dialogue themselves, it's just not going to work. I got an Ask FM question recently asking who were some of my favorite YouTubers who I strongly disagree with, and Danny's a great example of that. He and I disagree on a lot of things, but he's always willing to have a polite conversation with good arguments. Of course, there were a lot of things that didn't get addressed in the stream because we spent most of those 3 hours chasing our tails over the subject of consent, which was a huge issue for Amos's side of the argument, because if we accept that consent must necessarily be informed by definition, then the entire rest of his position falls apart. In particular, my friend Cognitive Thought made a lot of great points and arguments to Amos, which mostly went ignored and unanswered. If you haven't seen the stream yet, and for some reason you want to subject yourself to it, I've mirrored it on my Hangouts channel. But be warned, it's the most cancerous thing I've ever been a part of. And while I'm on this subject, I'd like to shout out another YouTuber called Teflon X5. He did a video of his own on the topic of reimagining our concepts of legal consent, where Amos's position is basically to completely get rid of the idea of legal consent. Teflon argues that it should be judged on a case-by-case basis, which I think is a much more reasonable position. He also attempts to define his proposal in such a way that prepubescent and very young children would still be ruled out. I'm not sure if it would work or if it would really be worth doing, but it's certainly more thought-provoking than Amos Yee's position. I'll close this out with some new fan art.